Hey everyone, I'm so excited to share this episode of the Building Thinkers podcast with you. I talked with T Mark Meyer, author of The Art of Being Authentic, and we had a wonderful conversation focused on one of my 12 favorite problems. How might we create space for mindset shift in learning experiences? T Mark is the owner of Peacemaker, where he leverages his credentials in neuro-linguistic programming and psychotherapy, empowering his clients to overcome limiting beliefs, emotions, and behaviors to enhance their communication, motivation, and leadership skills. In this episode, we talked about how authenticity is a continuous journey that requires constant work and self-reflection. We explored the difference between confidence and self-esteem and the role of authenticity in leadership. Without any further ado, here's my conversation with T Mark Meyer. All right, welcome to the Building Thinkers podcast. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by
T Mark Meyer.
Awesome. T Mark, you told me I should call you Mark, and I want to jump right in and hear a little bit of that story so we can go from there.
Of course. Well, T Mark Meyer is my pen name. I wrote my book, The Art of Being Authentic, T Mark Meyer. And the reason for that is I'm from Denmark, and my first name is a Danish name. It's called Trolls. And Trolls means the spearhead of Thor, the god of thunder. And that's a really cool name in Danish, right? The problem with it is in English, trolls sounds like the ones that live on the bridges, with the big hair. It's not that cool, right? Let's be honest. So, people, usually English speaking people call me Mark. And in order to not be confused with the many Mark Meyers that are out there, I wrote a book using my pen name, T Mark Meyer. So you can call me Mark, Tracy.
Okay, so we're going to go forward with Mark because T Mark has told us to do that. And I appreciate the background and really understanding the origin of names. It's really fascinating to me. So Mark, we're going to talk today. So this season 2 of the Building Thinkers podcast, we're narrowing in on what I like to call my 12 favorite problems. I wrote them as questions. These are kind of my constant curiosities, the things that are my life's work, the things I end up collaborating on and coming back around to. And so I'm really excited today. We're going to zoom into the question, how might we create space for true mindset shift in learning experiences, in life experiences? And so that's what we're going to zoom in on. And I'd love to start with Mark. Tell us a little bit of your story. What is it that you build? We're the Building Thinkers podcast. So I love to hear how you got to what you're doing now, any of the backstory, however you want to get there. I know it's always a kind of open-ended question, but the stage is yours, however you want to share.
All right. Well, I did build something, and I was very focused on building things. I think I've been, throughout my life. And I think I went out into the world with I had a need to prove myself to the world, to prove that I was good enough, and probably ultimately to prove to myself that I was good enough. And the way I decided to do that was the way that many people may decide to do that, which is to have success. What is, the conventional standard of success? To have a great job, a great career, make a lot of money. So, I studied a master's in economics, and then I, got a job at an international company, and I worked really hard because, I wanted to build something and I wanted to be successful. And that went really well, and I ended up being the Northern European director for a British online agency, and I had an apartment in Munich, and I had one in my native Copenhagen, Denmark, and managing 3 different offices in 3 different countries. And I had reached the goals that I'd set for myself, but for some reason, I felt like something was missing. So I figured, something has to change. Why is it I'm not completely happy right now? So I thought, okay, well, maybe I need to build something else. So I left my company, or the company I was working for, found some investors, and then I started a tech company. And I thought, okay, starting my own company, this tech company, this will be, what does it for me? So that company went really well. We won business awards, we won tech awards, revenue skyrocketed. We were making profits, even though we were a growth company. And basically the goals I'd set for myself, I'd reached. And for some reason, I still wasn't happy. Now, maybe other people would think, okay, maybe you're not doing this right, Mark, right? But I was in this modality, so I thought, I'm not happy. What do I need to do? And then I started another company. And I thought, okay, well, maybe one company isn't enough. Maybe I need two companies in order to be happy. And that became three companies. And at one point during this process, I've been training as a business coach because I needed to get a lot of results, especially for myself, but I also needed that for my staff in the different companies. And and then I was looking around, and I found you could train to become a psychotherapist. And it was a 4-year training program. And I thought, okay, well, I want to evolve. Maybe this is what I need. So I signed up for it. And then I showed up for the first class, and I hadn't really read the papers because, I was busy. And I realized when I showed up, they said, okay, well, you have to go through 40 hours of therapy yourself. And I looked around, I was like, 40 hours of therapy? What am I going to talk to a psychotherapist for 40 hours of, what are we going to talk about? But I ended up going through the training. I ended up doing the therapy, and it was the best thing I ever did because I realized that I've been chasing something outside myself. And what I was really looking for was something inside myself, which was, the authentic Mark that I wanted to express. So I made a shift. I left the corporate world and I started up as a psychotherapist. Today, I do therapy, individual counseling, couples counseling. I coach athletes and leaders on finding their purpose. And I work with companies on authentic leadership, on working together authentically as teams. And then I wrote the book, The Art of Being Authentic, because there was so much in my work about authenticity, and it was my own journey as well.
Wow, that is an incredible story, Mark. One thing I'm wondering if we can, dive into is as you had some of those ahas in your own therapy and, kind of just suddenly you're in it and you have to unpack some of those things. Did you find a route to that idea of was there an experience that you had, if you're willing to share, or anything that you could connect to this need to keep going, keep, being good enough? Did you get to anything around that?
Yeah, definitely. And I write about it in the book because I share my own personal story in the book, in the spirit of authenticity,
Mhm.
right? And for me, it was a childhood trauma of I went to school and I had a teacher. The school I went to, we had the same teacher in all classes for the first 4 years, which might be a great idea if you get along with your teacher. But I had a terrible teacher that did not
Mm,
like me, and she would
mm,
humiliate me in front of class. She would,
mm,
if I said something, she would tell the class, "Listen, that was a very stupid answer from Mark over there. Let's
mm,
just spend a minute or a few minutes and talk about it, right?" So she was abusive, emotionally and physically, and
mm,
it was something that was in me that when I left that school and I shifted schools after a few years, it had rooted in me,
mm,
that I wanted to prove to the world that I was nothing like my teacher said I was. I was nothing like that. I wanted to prove that to the world, but of course, ultimately, I wanted to prove it to myself. I wanted
mm,
to prove to myself that I was nothing like my teacher said, and I never wanted to feel like that little scared schoolboy in class again.
mm. The former educator in me is heartbroken at that experience, and I'm so sorry for that. And of course, their education system should be a safe place for all of our learners, and we know that that's not the experience that many people have. And maybe one of the things we can also hit on is how do you think our culture and our experiences continue to perpetuate this. I had a podcast guest call it happy whenitis. I'll be happy when, and you described it so beautifully. This next company. Okay, maybe it's two companies. Okay, I hit the goals that I have for myself. What's after that? And we see, of course, people in society and fame rise up and then express that they're not happy, that they have everything that people in other areas are striving for, and yet they've made it and it's not what they thought it would be. Do you have any perspective on how society, education, perpetuates that? And then maybe we can hit on how might we change some of that? That might be another topic, but I think it's connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's kind of two parts to it. The first thing I think that's important to note is that we all go through life with some sort of painful or traumatic experience that'll sort of dictate our future.
Mm,
And it's not the magnitude of it, because what I went through, maybe it's more than what other went through. And maybe it's nothing compared to what a lot of other people went
mhm,
through. But that's not really important. It's not the magnitude of what happened. It's the fact that it shapes your decision making in the
mm,
future, that it affects your self esteem, and it affects basically your path in life, right?
mm,
And I think that society in general, I think we put a lot of emphasis on goals and
mm,
on achievement. And the thing is, then it becomes easy for us to think that, okay, well, maybe this is what's, I just need to achieve this and then I'll be happy, because this is a
mhm,
little bit what we're told, right? If you go on social media, you
mhm,
start scrolling, you'll see some coach saying, okay, I used to make $2,500 and now I make 25 million. And this is how I did it. And then, maybe you'll grab onto that. You'll say, oh, I've just been doing it wrong. I need to
mm,
do this, and then it'll happen. So I think society in general sort of promotes this performance culture where
mm,
goals are essential for your happiness. And I don't think real life really works like that.
mm. So, if you're thinking about listeners who are connecting to your story and they're recognizing they're in this pattern, and sometimes I think we call it the hedonistic treadmill. This,
Mhm.
go, 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 do, more, more, more. And to your point, you scroll social media, and that's the engine for its growth. Is if we can keep you on there and buying things, then we've won. The algorithms have won. And so, what would you say to listeners who are maybe recognizing I am in this pattern and maybe I don't know anything else? Where might you tell them to start?
Well, I'll tell them to start by maybe pausing for a moment and thinking about the fact that goals in themselves are meaningless, and that may sound a little a little strong, right? But but they are if they're not tied to a purpose, right? Because
Mhm,
a goal is an ending, and an ending does not make sense in itself, right? You don't listen to
mm,
the last 20 seconds of a song just to, to experience the song. You don't read the last chapter of the book, in order to enjoy the book.
mm,
You don't go out dancing hoping that the DJ will play the best song as the last song at the end of the night, right? So endings in themselves really make no sense.
mm,
It has to be the experience of, going towards that goal. And the only way that goal is really going to make sense is if
mm,
it's tied to a purpose.
mm.
It has to be tied to a purpose of why we're doing what we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes. So it sounds like at the beginning, because I am a bit of a goals nerd, a productivity nerd, and this is all
Mhm.
intertwined for me in my own sense of I need to do more. And I've done 4 years of therapy, so I've come to terms with a lot of this. As I actually support others in goals and things around that, we start a lot of times with what is your learning priority and a deep dive into why you want to learn the thing you want to learn to go forward. So that's where I've started, is a deep understanding of the why behind what you're pursuing. Because to your point, if somebody wants to learn another language, for example, that can be a very heavy lift. It's completely doable. Anybody can learn a new language at any point in their life. However, it takes a lift, and you have to be willing to really make some trade-offs in terms of your time and what you decide to do, and maybe finances. Go, live abroad is one of the best ways to really immerse yourself and learn a new language quickly. And because it is challenging, you really need to stop and recognize, why do I want to learn this language? And there are some very compelling reasons to do so. But I think starting there, I've found the same thing to be true. And so maybe from here we can start talking about the mindset shifts that you see. And it's so incredible to hear your story of becoming a psychotherapist. And so from this place of literally understanding the brain shifts that a person might make, Um, Maybe let's start to unpack, what do people overcomplicate in that area? And so let's say if only people knew when it came to these mindset shifts, what's something you've learned in that area?
Well, if only people knew, I would relate it to what you just said, what you did with the people your clients, and saying, okay, what's the why? You know, if because that's one of the most important things, and if only people knew how important a purpose is, and also what a purpose really is, then would help them tremendously in shifting their mindset, in making more complex decisions, and getting better results from it, right? Because what I often find when I talk with people, you ask them, well, why are you doing this? Well, why do you want to learn a new language? And let's just pretend that your client says, well, I want to learn Chinese because then I can sell a lot of products in China and make a lot of money. And they'll be like, okay, well, that's great, but that's not really a purpose that's behind your goal here. That's just another goal. So you have a goal, and now you have a goal behind that goal. You know, a purpose is something different. It's something that you can express, right? A goal is something that it's in the way you have to chase it, or at least strive for it. I mean, that's inherent in a goal in order for it to make sense. That's not inherent in a purpose. A purpose is something you express. That's something you express along the journey, like we talked about before. Endings in themselves do not, have any meaning, right? So you need to find it. What is it? What is the purpose I'm trying to express here? Because then you can also better evaluate if that goal you have is actually the goal you want to chase. I can speak from my own experience. I chased a lot of goals, right? And if I had become aware of what my purpose, what my intention was with that in the beginning, maybe I would have chosen a different path, right? If I'd sat down with my younger self, and my younger self had said to me, I would like to feel good enough. So I plan on starting 4 companies and, working 100 hours a week. How does that sound for a solution? Then I would have said, no, it sounds like a really bad solution, right? So getting to that why, getting to that purpose behind your intention behind doing those things, and maybe also what it is you want to bring into the world. What is it that you want to express that can really help you in sort of, if you know that, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to set goals. It's going to be a lot easier for you to change your mindset, to learn new things.
Hmm. Yeah, that is making me think about, how I've seen my own purpose shift over time. So maybe the question here is, have you also seen purpose to shift in different seasons? And, maybe I'll throw out there to unpack a little bit. I think that, an ongoing theme when I have found purpose and articulated it is around impact. And so,
Mm.
whether that was as a classroom teacher, where I started out in the bilingual classroom in the public schools of Mexico and supporting my students there, to I came back and got a master's degree in early childhood with a focus on neurodiversity and special needs, because I saw students slipping through the cracks in those areas and wanted to take the bilingual aspect and kind of pair it with that. And, over time, that led to understanding personalized instruction and understanding, that neurodiversity helped me recognize in adult learners too. And long story short, now working with corporate clients in social impact space, when I write the language on my website of who I'm serving and I'm targeting, I continue with this idea of a social impact to help people, unlock human potential. So to me, when I look at that purpose, at times I would say it was very different in the type of work that I was doing. But yet now when I look back, that purpose, maybe didn't actually change all that much. I don't know. Do you have any feedback for me around that?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, I mean, our purpose can change over our lifetime, right? Because what's different with a purpose is, a purpose is not something you can't sit and define it like you would with a goal list. You can't sit down and
Mhm.
say, okay, Tracy, this is my purpose. I'm going to define it to be this.
Oh man, I can't
It's
have like a statement right there that's just like on my computer.
well, you can, but in order to get to it, you have to uncover it. right?
Hmm.
Because it's the sum of your life experiences combined with your talents, combined with what you enjoy to do, and
Hmm.
combined with what you don't enjoy to do. That sort
Hmm.
of, and what you see in the world, right? You see these bilingual children that are having difficulties and so forth. All of these things, though, they sort of merge into becoming a meaningful purpose for you,
Hmm.
right? So it's something that we need to uncover, and
Hmm.
that can change over time. But I think that there'll be components, and probably very
Hmm.
large components of your purpose, that's going to be the same, you know, for the entirety of your life.
Right.
And a lot of people, when they find their purpose and when they connect with their purpose, they realize that this is something that's always been with them. That's something
Hmm.
they've always been good at since they were little kids. There was always some aspect of this that they enjoyed to do,
Hmm.
or they were really good at, right? So I think it's to answer your question. I think it can change,
Hmm.
but the majority of it's going to be the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, another piece of it that I see, as you're speaking to this is the creativity side. So as a child, I would draw and create, and I had this, okay, we had this set of children's encyclopedias, like the big, like encyclopedia version, and there was
Hmm.
one called Make and Do, and I loved it because it was all sorts of like paper mache and create a guitar out of a shoebox with rubber bands and all sorts of things. So I made all of that, and now I see in one of my main roles is learning experience design with my clients in the social impact space, and so I'll create activities, and they tend to be around these mindset shifts, and in particular around individual and collective potential, which is an area that I'm always interested in, my own potential and this growth. And there has been seasons of time where that has gotten out of balance, and it's been seeking the accolade or the achievement over that purpose if I'm out of my own alignment. But I think that that's maybe another area for me that the purpose and the enjoyment is in the process. I love my work now, and it is very fulfilling to spend the time now doing that. And I think maybe that's a piece now that drives me to want that for others, to want others to, the idea of unlocking their potential is not about arriving at a goal, to your point, or an end, but that people don't have to be stuck where they are thinking. That makes me really sad when I talk to people that are stuck in a role or stuck on a team, where it's meeting after meeting. For example, I'm hearing this a lot. There's so many corporate and HR memes about this, of just the back to back nature of these meetings, and we could there's so much potential, I think, within there. And so maybe I'm getting to, when we're thinking about these mindset shifts, um, I hear this need to pause and reflect. How might you share with people, where do they make space for that if they're in the grind and they're kind of in that survival mode? This maybe builds on, where do they start, but how might you ask them to pause um, when they're trying to just get through the day?
Yeah. Well, I would say that first of all, you got to stop a little bit thinking, what should I accomplish now, and start thinking a little bit more about who do I want to be right now,
Mm,
right? To sort of be a little more present. And I know it's scary, because that's the good thing about goals is, when you're chasing a goal, sure, you can be present, but you can also shut everything out, and then just focus on that goal and you
mm,
forget everything else, right? And you feel you get that direction from that. You can get that direction from your purpose as well, right? And a lot of the times when we set goals, we're not really aware of our purpose. We end up actually defeating our own purpose, and we
mm,
end up feeling worse about ourselves. A practical example that maybe a lot of parents can relate to is, I have two girls that
mm.
and I want them to be in bed by 8, or at least I wanted that a few years ago, right? And one of my purposes, because we have multiple purposes, also something we can discuss, but when it comes to being a parent, I want to be a loving dad and a loving parent. So I want them to be in bed by 8 so they can get rested and, for the next day for school and so forth, or in kindergarten. And it'll go fine, right? And 10 to 8, they'll be in their 90s, their teeth are brushed and everything, and then all of a sudden the little one will empty all her Legos, and the old one will be like, Dad, I've decided I'm not going to bed before midnight, and from now on only midnight and never before, right? And and then they'll be, okay, come on, kids, you got to go to bed, you got to get to sleep, maybe raise my voice a little bit, sound a little bit more, with authority, go to bed. And then, I'll end up in these, okay, no iPads for a week, no more candy for the rest of the year. Usually, I'll go a little bit over the top. It's never going to happen in real life, right? But and it's going to be a huge argument. My wife's going to hear it. She's going to get upset with me for losing my temper. And all of a sudden, I've defeated my purpose of being a loving dad because I've been so focused on the goal of getting my kids to bed by 8, right? And we do a lot of that. It's a small practical example, but we do a lot of that in life where we defeat our own purpose because we're so fixated on the goal. But if we don't even know what our purpose is, then, we can't really do anything about it. And that's why it's so important, I think, for us to be aware of what our purpose is in order to, have a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Mark, this example is too close to home. Stop it. I have two boys, and we have lots of Legos and lots of bedtime conversations, and I really have seen, yeah, again, that's just a very practical example that's very relatable. And so, um, thinking about the power of a mindset shift. Let's say we have more clarity on our purpose. What are some other areas where you've seen maybe some stumbling blocks when people have that first and core piece of understanding their purpose, but then how do they take the next step of knowing what to do with it when maybe they have a similar aha around the corporate environment or around the work culture that they're in or around a relational um, you know situation that no longer serves them. Where where do you advise um, those that you work with to start once they have that core purpose defined?
Yeah, I think that something happens when it comes to purpose, and I guess we can say also authenticity, because
Mhm.
authenticity is so related to aligning with your purpose, right? And the first thing is that you got to think about is usually people start to worry about, if I express this purpose, what will other people think, right? You start fearing other people's judgments, right? And once you're through with that, then something else happens, and that is, when we've all been judged a lot during our lives, what happens when we've been judged a lot? We start internalizing it, right? So then we start fearing our own judgments. Oh, I can't do that. That cannot be my purpose. I'm pretty safe, with just working 8 hours a week and doing back-to-back meetings, and the kids' college fund will be okay. Yeah, So then you start judging yourself, right? So then we have to try to sort of bypass those fears of judgment of others, and sort of our own judgments. And I give some practical advice that the listener can also actually use in order to find their purpose. Because when people come to find my purpose sessions, I usually do a little bit of do an exercise with them. I'll start out by asking them, I'll say, okay, well, what if money was not an object? What would you do? And then some thoughts will come, to your conscious mind, and you'll think about some stuff, and then I'll say, okay, let's take it a step further. Let's imagine that there are no expectations in life. Nobody expects anything from you. Then what would you do? And then, some more thoughts about your purpose starts coming to your conscious mind. And then usually I say, okay, let's try last thing. Let's try and pretend that whatever you did, whatever you do, it'll be met with positivity. So if you say, I want to do this, then your husband, your parents, your friends are gonna say, Tracy, that's so great. Wow, you got to do that. Just going to be really supportive. And when you try to entertain those thoughts, you sort of bypass those fears
Mm,
of judgment and of your own judgments, and that can sometimes lead you to your purpose. And what comes to your conscious mind may not be your purpose just as is, and one line, here's my purpose, but there might be components in what you
mm,
see yourself doing that you can take and you can use either to change your life or to implement where you are right now, right? Because a lot of us can express our purpose doing what we're doing. We don't have to change our circumstances necessarily. We just need to implement some of those components from our purpose into our daily lives.
mm, mm. I love that. It's making me think about those connection points. That last piece that you said about you could implement more of these components of your purpose where you are. I think sometimes we've been talking about stories of big shifts and big changes, and maybe sometimes those mindset shifts allow us to be content where we are with this infusion that you're talking about of more opportunities for our purpose. One of the things I developed last year is actually a goal guide. I know we said goals are bad, but they're also good. But no, I'm
Also
just
good.
kidding.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
When
Yes,
you're
yeah.
oriented in your purpose, but
Yeah.
the very last step is really the goals. But everything leading up to that is more of the why. But one of the things that I built in that was this, exercise of kind of turn from and turn towards. You see those Instagram posts that are at the end of the year, what I'm gonna less of this and more of this. It's kind of that idea. And I think that when I looked at my list this year, that incorporates in, I'm making the connection now that those things I wanted more of are that purpose infused within, and having more of these moments in my different roles. You hinted to this of like your purpose in these different roles of being a parent, and you know um it's interesting because I think a lot about like the learning experiences I bring to my clients. Of course, I want my children to love learning. And sometimes I lose my purpose along the way in some of what you described with the Legos and the bedtime, where I'm like, you must learn your math facts, you must love learning. And it's like, okay, well, now that's out the window. Um, but I think that one of the turn from and turn towards was this idea of connect before correct. Because with my own children, this I want to be that loving presence, and I have high expectations for them. And sometimes expectation mom comes out as I want to be a warm demander. I want to have those high expectations, and I want to lead with love and care and connection first, especially when they've been already at school all day trying to, make it all work. So, yeah, I
Okay,
wonder if you
that's a
have any thoughts about that.
I do, because that's such a wonderful example, Tracy. Because we do have multiple purposes, right? And what you describe right there with your kids, and then you have this that you want people to learn and grow, and that's your purpose, right? Yes, that's your purpose, and you can live that 100% maybe at work. But as a parent, you also have a different purpose, because sometimes your boy's going to come home from school. One of your boys going to come home from school, and he's going to be sad and he's crying because he had a bad day, and then he needs a hug,
Mhm.
and he needs his mother to be there, and that's all he needs.
Mhm.
So that's your purpose in being a loving parent. Your purpose is not to teach him how to learn and grow, but it's just to be there, to be
Mhm.
present with him and give him that emotional support. And if we become too fixated on this with purposing that,
Mhm.
okay, well, I want to define my purpose as one line, and this is what I want to do, and I want to express that in every aspect of my life, we're going to fail. We're going to fail miserably, because we have multiple purposes depending on our situation. And we might as well realize that, and we might as well spend some time thinking about, okay, I'm in this situation. So, my role as a parent requires something different than my role, at work, for instance.
Mhm. I want to shift to leadership. I noticed in the work that you do, there's a through line of leaders, athletes, and I played lacrosse in college. And so I have these connections to athletic leadership, and just kind of thinking about what that means and the types of mindset shifts I needed to make along my athletic journey. And then now I end up in a lot of work with leaders in my social impact and my corporate clients. And I have seen in that work a lot of mindset shift about what makes a good leader, what is most important in leading and serving others, and the idea of people first. And I'm curious what you've seen when it comes to leadership, maybe some of the mindset shifts that have occurred there that you'd love to see spread. If more leaders could have this shift, or something that really unlocked for your clients um, growth and fulfillment in what ways they have defined as success for themselves.
Yeah, well, I think that authentic leadership and purposeful leadership, but especially this of being authentic, of being yourself, um, I think it's people are trying to understand it in a new way, and people are embracing it more.
Mhm.
And I think it's good because the generations that we all work for different motivations, and that changes over time. And I think the shift that we see in the work culture is that people work because they want to make an impact, as you said. They want to make a difference, and if they want to make an impact, then they have to express their own purpose, and that company has to sort of align with that purpose somehow, right? So it becomes a requirement for leaders to be more authentic. And being authentic is about being who you are, being true to your values, and bringing them to work. But it's also, and it's equally about allowing other people to be their authentic self. So when you really grasp that about authentic leadership is just not, it's not only me being me, because that can very easily become ego driven, right? And that's not authenticity, right? But it's also allowing other people to be who they are. Well, then it becomes easier to get closer to purpose. It becomes easier as a unit to make an impact. And ultimately, a company should have a purpose that they're aware of, just as we as individuals have a purpose that we're aware of. It's more, a company should do more than just make money, just like a human being should do more than just breathe and survive, right? I understand that money is a prerequisite for running a company, just as breathing air and is a prerequisite for us living and surviving. But we need a purpose in order to create a legacy, in order to make an impact, in order to make a positive difference in the world for the people around us. And that goes the same for a company.
Hmm. I'm wondering, building on something we were talking about a little bit back, but around the education system, around the culture, and kind of this push towards success being defined as this one, maybe one dimensional form of success that is wealth and maybe fame somewhere in there, or having done something like worthwhile. And I wonder now, to your thoughts on the education side of that, where one of the incredible clients I'm working with right now is in the higher education space. And um, I got called up to say, Tracy, will you help us challenge the status quo of higher education? We want to totally redesign the student experience. It's a wonderful, amazing project. And so I'm deep in thinking about what that looks like, um, what even down to like the courses that students should take that might be totally different than what we've traditionally considered to be a part of the curriculum. If you were playing that role, if you were redesigning, college courses, what things would you want to have in place for this type of awareness, and maybe a new version of success that is so tied to purpose? What experiences do you think our young people need to have to get to that? Selfish question.
No, but I think that one of the things that we need to instill in ourselves and in young people is we need to focus a little bit more on self-esteem and a little less on confidence. And I can briefly touch on the difference here, right? So let's say you and I, Tracy, we go to play a tennis match. Okay, if you're really good at tennis, you're gonna have high confidence going into that game. If you're like me, who suck at tennis, you're gonna have low confidence, right, going into this game, because confidence is about how I expect to handle a given situation. And if I handle it well, my confidence will go up. So if I win the tennis match, I'll have more confidence. If I lose it, it'll go down, right? Self esteem is nothing like that. Self esteem is the worth we place on ourselves, right? That's how worthy are we of love. And that's going to be unaffected of any outcome of a tennis match that you and I have, right? Because you know that if you lose that tennis match, it's not going to change who you are, the worth that you have, and how worthy you are of basically receiving love, right? And we put a lot of emphasis on confidence and on these more ego driven
Mm.
ways of doing things, because confidence can also be an ego driven thing, right? And you fake it till you make it and you build up your confidence.
Mhm.
But the problem with confidence is it only helps you if your experience in the past is sort of relevant to what you're going to do, right? So if you're really good at tennis, maybe you'll have high confidence going into a ping pong match, but it's not going to help you when you have to discuss a personal problem with your partner or your boss or whatever, right? Whereas self esteem, the higher our self esteem is, the easier it becomes to us for us to handle the sort of unfamiliar situations, and the easier it becomes for us to express ourselves.
Mm.
Because when we express our purpose and our authenticity, and we are afraid of what other people are going to think of us, well, we have to feel that we're worthy. Otherwise, we're not going to take the chance. Does that make sense?
I think I understand the difference between those two for maybe the first time. That was such a beautiful explanation. It had me um, considering a couple different directions from here because now I'm curious about um, what you helped me see in that is this self-esteem when attended to is um, can become secure and um, protected amidst the uh, volatility of life. I've been having a conversation recently with a client about how there is this perspective that life is kind of up and to the right. You continue to grow and learn. And so, you go to college, you get a job, get married or whatever, and each of these next things is somehow better and up and to the right when the reality of everyone's lived experience that I've talked to is I've yet to find another example of this is much more like this. And for the listeners, I'm doing like a motion of up and down. It's much more volatile and there's seasons of great joy and there's seasons of grief and there's ambiguity and unknown. Talk about the last like 5 years of our collective trauma as a world of the things that we've been through. And so I'm almost envisioning this picture that you've painted of self-esteem as something that can when built, when attended to, when nurtured, can withstand the changes in circumstances because it's not about what I do but who I am devoid of those circumstances, and that can't be as maybe taken from us, although I might argue that it could be, but you're more to your point when you attend to it, that will maybe help us withstand life. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think? That's a lot of pontificating.
No, but I think you're absolutely right, Tracy. I think it's very insightful, and I hope the listeners pay attention, right? Because your self-esteem, as opposed to your confidence, is not concerned with the outcome of what's going to happen, right? The outcome does not define it as it does with confidence, where it's 100% defined by the outcome you have. Have a great outcome, goes up; bad outcome goes down. Your self-esteem is not affected by the outcome, and in that way, it matches perfectly with purpose, because purpose is not really concerned with the outcome, at least not the quantity of the outcome in the same way either. I give an
Mm,
example in the book. I say Mother Teresa, if she was alive today, you wouldn't see her on Instagram doing selfies saying, "Hey, I just fed 10,000 people. Tomorrow we're feeding 20,000," right? Because it was never about the goal. For her, it's about the purpose. So
mm,
she got the same experience helping one person as she did 100 people, right? And I
mm,
get the same experience when I work with a client. That feeling when we've made sort of a connection and they move forward, and I'm sure that you also, Tracy, get that feeling,
mm,
of expressing your purpose, right? And it
mm,
doesn't matter if that get expressed once, with one person, or
mhm,
if that's 10 people in the room, right?
mm,
So your purpose doesn't care about the outcome in this, similarly to your self-esteem, right? So I think it's more solid, and I think it's harder for the surroundings to sort of take it away from you.
Hmm. Yeah. I think of several examples of this, both personal examples and just what I see in kind of some of the spaces that I'm in. But one that's coming to me is around the pressure to scale. And maybe this goes back to some of your experience in the company side of things, that you were involved in. But it's almost as if there's this facade that if it's not huge, if it's not scalable, what's the point? What's the point for a couple people or a couple course sales that did impact people's life? It needs to be millions of sales. And I think this goes back to feeding into the input that we allow, and the algorithms that determine so much of what we read, what we like, what we listen to. um, I've done some work in one of my learning experiences, the learning agility cohort, around how we can take back control of those algorithms and start to have it aligned to our learning priority, which is our version of purpose in that work. um, and so I'm thinking, are there other ways? Because let's say I intellectually understand and my listeners tracking in, but I find that in the course of the day, I get swayed back into maybe over reliance on growing the confidence side, growing the scale side, growing somebody else's definition of success. Is it a one-time aha mark, or is it ongoing work to stay in this place that we're talking about?
Yeah, and it's ongoing work, right, Tracy? I mean, there is no like check mark. Okay, I'm 100% authentic now. Check, right? I
It's
got the
its own new
laminated.
goal.
Yeah, right, exactly. And sometimes people on podcasts would ask me that. So are you now authentic? And I'm like, it's not something that it's not a laminated certificate. I have 100% authentic. It's a continuous journey. It's a constant work, and you're gonna be challenged on that. I also get challenged on that. I sit sometimes and I'm looking at the book sales, and I'm looking at the workshops that I do, and I sit in my spreadsheet, and the old CEO of Mark sort of pops into my head, and then I could maximize profit if I did this, and then I have to stop and say, hey, wait, Mark, that's not why you're doing it, right? You're not doing this too. It's okay to maximize profit. It's okay to make money, and it's okay to achieve your goals, but you must have your purpose with you all the time. And that requires constantly checking in with yourself.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. Okay, I think we could talk all day, but we got to get to the wrap up side of things. And so, um, let's go to Mark. If you have any recommendations of books, would you tell us about your book first, and then any other recommendations there, any podcasts? And I want to make sure people know what you're offering now, who your clients are, and we'll put all those links in the episode description. So, take it away with any recommendations.
Well, of course, I would recommend my own book, The Art of Being Authentic. Right? I think that there are a lot of books out there that sort of are inspiring and touches upon this topic. Right? If you're looking for sort of a more of a leadership approach to things, Brene Brown has made a wonderful book called Dare to Lead, and all of the books are really really great. There's also Bill George's True North, which is a classic when it comes to authentic leadership. And if we talk about authenticity on a more personal level, then someone like Dr. Gabor Mate, I don't know if you know him, with the myth of new normal and scattered minds, great books on authenticity as well. Yeah, there's plenty out there, plenty of good stuff.
Will you tell us more about who you wrote your book for?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I wrote my book for anyone who find themselves in a situation where life hasn't really turned out the way they wanted. A bit like my own situation, right? And I'll do a brief example because I know we're coming to the end, right? But I compare it sort of to a plane ride. So if you take off from, let's say, from New York to Rome, about the same latitude, right? Let's say that this is your authentic journey in life. Usually what happens is something happens in life, like we have a bad teacher, or we come home and try to explain something to our parents and they don't give us the attention that we need or whatever. So we find out, okay, when I'm really my authentic self, when I'm doing like this,
Mm,
people don't really respond very well. So what they do is they change a little bit. We all do that. We change just a little bit, just a
mm.
0.5% maximum. That's it. So we're 99.5% ourselves, no problem, don't worry. And we do that a couple of times. So maybe, about a percentage, maybe 2% change, right? Let me compare this to a plane ride. Well, half an hour after you took off from New York, if you change your course by a direction, by a degree or 2 degrees, right? What happens when you've been flying for 8 hours? Well, you look out the window and you see Iceland, you see Greenland. You don't see, there's no Rome, there's no piazzas out there, right? And all of a sudden you're thinking, what's going on, right? And in that moment, I wanted to offer an alternative to what you see out on social media when you think, things aren't working out for me. So instead of this, how to make a lot of money, how to will yourself through anything, or how to manifest and pretend that everything will be good. I say, okay, well, I want to offer an alternative, because I think what you're really looking for is that connection with yourself, your authentic self. That's what's going to get you on the right course again.
Thank you. Okay. Will you also share with us if there's any other kind of input or recommendations? Do you like podcasts or, other learning courses? Did you mention you have workshops?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in learning more about authenticity, of course you can, as I said, you can go look for my book on Amazon. You can also go to my website, tmarkmeyer.com. I have newsletters on authentic living and authentic leadership. I have an Instagram profile, Authentic T Mark Meyer, as well, where I share a lot about authentic living, a lot of little video clips and tips. And on LinkedIn, if you connect with me there, I talk about leadership. So I have a lot of resources available, and I also do online sessions. So I'm available, at least for anyone who's interested.
Wonderful, Mark. Thank you so much. This was such a powerful conversation. Thank you for coming on, for sharing your insights, and I look forward to staying connected on the onlines and seeing the incredible work you do. So thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to the Building Thinkers podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a podcast rating and review. That helps more listeners find us in the world of podcasting algorithms. You can find out more about my learning and development strategy services at buildingthinkers.com. And remember, there's no limit to what you can learn.